Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran jazz pianist Tony Heimer of the Vallecas Art Ensemble. On behalf of the band, he talked about the new 2023 album called Soundbeams. The band was formed in 1998 in Madrid to confront the 21st century and took their name from a barrio where they rehearsed. With three prolific composers, their repertoire is mainly original music and is the confluence of their various compositional styles that gives the group their unique sound. Tony gets into this journey in music that he's been on, so much more. Enjoy.
Thank you for taking a minute out today to talk with Neon Jazz. And before we get into Soundbeams, you know, the artist community, especially the jazz community, really got rocked by COVID. And I'm curious how you survived that 3-year time period now that the world's waking up, and how it's kind of changed the way that you go about things now.
It was a drastic, terrible thing that one of the first persons to die from COVID was our sax player, Marcelo Peralta, and that was just a tremendous blow and really rocked me because he'd been my go-to top call guy for many years and a soul brother. So that really put a crimp in our plans as well with the group because he was just such a tremendous player and a part of the soul of the band in many ways. He had such a great sound and played all saxes, and he just sounded great on all of them. So losing Marcelo right at the beginning of the COVID mess was just a horrible thing. And then it started with the inability to go to Europe or back and forth and to travel or to gig or just so. My reaction, I guess, was just to go back into the shed and practice and write. And when they began to let people travel back to Europe, I went back. I was working with some comedians at the Fools Festival, and I went back to do that. And I could see they were relaxing the rules somewhat, and little by little, they started to do that. And it's not going to ever get back to normal, in my opinion. In terms of gigging, but, you know, yeah, it affected me a lot, losing Marcelo and changing directions and giving me another focus, you know. So I've been practicing a lot, rethinking.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, having an album come out now has to feel good, and, you know, with live shows and things opening up. So how does that feel?
Well, that's great, and I'm glad we were finally able to get this stuff released on Koshkill Records. We've got there was a session we did a few years back, and before Marcelo passed away, and obviously, and we got 2 records coming out of it. So one released, this one, Soundbeams, and there's a volume 2 coming out soon, whenever she gets that together. It feels great, and getting back to playing is wonderful, you know. I've got some stuff cooking back in Europe and planning to go back there soon. And it seems to be like, to me, as though there's more opportunities to play over there, at least for me there are.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I get that sense too. So let's get kind of the beginnings of your life here. How did this jazz journey begin for you and gain fame?
Well, in the short version, I guess I was a rock and roller back in the 60s until, you know, Hendrix fan and everything. And then I started listening to and was exposed to some things. My parents had the classic record, Errol Garner, Concert by the Sea. It was a tremendous first influence on me. I listened to it a million times. Love Errol's playing. Also, the Solo Monk record we had, and that was also just affected me deeply, and my love for stride comes in great part from that record of Monk playing solo. I went to see what I could. I saw, back when we were younger, we couldn't go into the jazz clubs, so there was a place called Dante's where they'd leave the kitchen door open, and the young people could go hang around in the back listening to the gig through the, you know, coming out the kitchen doors. I saw Joe Pass a million times until I was old enough to go into the clubs, and then I would go and see him there. I saw Joe hundreds of times. There was the Pilgrimage Theater concerts in L.A. back on Sundays, free Sunday jazz concerts where they got tremendous players, Jimmy Rolls, Herbie Hancock, Harold Lamb, Bobby Hutcherson, all kinds of great concerts every Sunday. So I was exposed to a lot, and my friends turned me on to things like, late Coltrane and Captain Beefheart and Zappa, so that was all part of the mix. In high school, I had this tremendous luck to have this great teacher back in like 70 or 71, I think it was, Tom Dotson, and he exposed all his kids to John Cage and Moog. He had a Moog synthesizer in our room that was probably one of like 10 that existed in the world at that time. I have no idea how he got that to North Hollywood High back then. It was amazing. But we each got to have it an hour a day with it. So that became, electronics was part of my concept from the beginning of my playing. I did finally wind up asked Joe Pass for some lessons, as I was mainly a guitarist then. I'd played some piano, but I was focused on the guitar, and I had a lesson with Joe. And he said, okay, play something. And I sat down and played some bluegrass tune, which is all I could do, and he just hit the roof. Joe's pass went sideways, and he yelled at me for 10 minutes. He said things I'm not going to repeat. But he would say, like, you got a lot of nerve coming to see me. I'm like, the top guys in town come to study with me. You can't play anything. And he yelled at me like that for a long time. And it was just my head was between my knees. Finally, he said, all right, look at these scale positions and get one of those books of chord voicings and memorize it and harmonize a few standards, and you come back in a year or so. And I did that. A year later, I went back to see him, and I had done a lot of that work. But he listened to me play, and he said, okay, well, I can see you did some work, but let me say this. You're a piano player too, right? Yeah, he said, maybe you should focus on that. So I did, and I started studying with Charlie Shoemake on piano. 4 years or so with Charlie, just working on bebop stuff, transcribing solos and transposing them. And Charlie taught me a lot. And then I moved to New York and studied with Jackie Byard for a while. He was tremendous. We sort of focused on stride playing. Jackie's a master of that. I should mention that while I was in L.A. before I left, every Thursday night there was a joint called The Tail of the Cock in Sherman Oaks or Studio City, and every Thursday Johnny Guarneri would play solo piano there, and he was just a monster stride player who had worked with Betty Goodman and lots of jazz greats. And he was there for, you go down and have a drink, and you could sit right by his left hand on a stool and watch his left hand. So I went there every Thursday and saw Johnny. He would say to me, name a tune, and you could pick a tune, and I'd say whispering. He'd say, okay, what key? And you'd think of a hard key like B, natural. You'd say, okay, what time signature? And you'd say 11/8, and then he would play a stride version of that tune. 11/8 and B natural that would just floor you, and the guy had tremendous jobs. So he was also a major influence on me. Though I did not technically study with him, I asked him for lessons, and he said, man, you come here every Thursday night, you sit there by my left hand and watch me all night. What more do you need? So I had a lot of good teachers. I did seminars with Barry Harris and learned about the bebop scale. Pat Martino had a great seminar where he talked about his concepts of diminished chords and so forth. Horace Tapscott seminar I went to, and he was just amazing, very open concepts, and all this stuff affected me a lot,
So you've obviously graduated from all of those years of learning and being now a veteran. What is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What ultimately motivates you?
Well, I guess the opportunity to express oneself. I'm a composer, and being able to write something and hear it played. Particularly, I'm a arranger for big bands too, and I think that arranging a chart for a big band or writing a piece for a big band, listening to them rehearse it for the first time has got to be one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. I still love that. First read through of a chart, that makes it all worthwhile, that work. Playing when you have a good night, when you're playing great, that's a great feeling. That makes up for all the slog, the grinding, and the freedoms that you get as a professional to refuse jobs if you don't want to take them, or to go somewhere, but you're not locked into a 9-to-5 scene in one place. I travel a lot. I move around. I was in Europe I lived there for many years, and my history there is not finished. I'll be going back soon. So I like the freedom to move around, to explore my own concepts, to be creative, all that stuff, you know.
Cool. So, you know, of all of the things that you've gone through in your life up to this point, what if you had a dream tonight, you ran into a 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell many things. I'd sit down and have a long talk. Basically, I tell them to stay sober, one important tip. Don't mess around with stuff that will sidetrack you. To work your ass off. You know, I always practice a lot, but I tell them just to keep working. I used to practice 9 hours a day when I was 20. I just said, don't let up, you know. I would probably show them some of the concepts I learned later. I would show them when I was 20, you know. You should work on this stuff here. I didn't find this out till 20 years later. Some of those things that I would tell them, you know, to work on your ear and your time and learn a million tunes in all keys and all that kind of stuff. It's also important, though, I think, and I would probably explain this to myself, is that you have to try to stay current and adaptable and use the concepts of improvisation in your life and your approach to music as well as your playing of it. And by which I mean, if the scene changes all the time and you gotta adapt to that, or at least recognize it and say, how am I going to deal with the fact that, you know, they're playing something else now, you know, for example.
Yeah. So why do you love jazz?
Why do I love it? Well, when I was young, I wanted to be a writer of prose, and I used to sit on the typewriter and listen to music while I typed, and I would play these the rock albums we had in the house, and listen, the lyrics would mess me up because I was trying to write, and so I started putting on the instrumental albums that we had, and those were mostly jazz stuff, like the ones I mentioned, and the Duke and Trio album we had, and some later jazz albums that I bought. So they were easy to write on the typewriter without hearing the words or lyrics that the rock tunes were. So I started to get attracted to the pretty notes, the 11ths and 9ths and 13ths and all these extensions that the guys were using, and the freedom and the ease with which some of these people were improvising. It just totally amazed me and enthralled me as I want to do that, you know. My piano playing was so bad then I thought, you know, I really need to up my game. So I started to do that. I also should probably mention, though, that I've had kind of a dual career in jazz and also in theater and comedy. That's where I've been working with a lot of theater groups and comedy groups, and particularly last 30 years or so with Django Edwards, who's a well-known clown. I hate to use the word clown in America because they don't understand what it means. It's not Ronald McDonald. It's a European physical comedy is different than comedy here. So when you say clown to somebody here, they think of a killer clown or Ronald McDonald or some bogus BS like that. When there's a bunch of creative performers, which I've worked with, who use the word clown loosely to encompass a wide variety of artists. So I've spent a lot of time working in that field and doing comedy as well. I'm trying to bring music, my jazz understanding to it, and that's been a life. I mean, I've been working on that for a long time. Major fan of, for example, Victor Borge and how he incorporated classical music and comedy, and I've been trying to sort of do something similar, but with more cooler, more modern stuff, I should say. So you know.
Yeah. No. I was just going to ask you. I was kind of wanted. It was kind of a lead-in based on my previous question. You know, everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I guess it's, you know, part of one answer would be that, I mean, all the things that I do, you know, that make up who I am. I'm a composer, a pianist. I've been shedding the organ a lot these last couple of years, so hoping to be, you know, do some organ gigs. So an organist, I'm a arranger, a writer, comedy guy. I mean, I just stand up and accompany comedy acts and clowns and stuff. And I teach. I taught a lot in Spain. I had some great students. I should give her a plug. Esther Quevedo, probably my best student. She turned out to be a great piano player. She's got a couple of albums out of her own in Spain. So I'm a part of my dad, you know, and an evolving person. So I guess I'm part of a sum of all of those parts.
Yeah.
You know.
So, Tony, if anyone wants to get Soundbeams, learn more about anything revolving around your world and touring and anything involved with your world, where can they go?
Well, right now I don't have a website. I'm available on Facebook as Tony Benton, and that's where what I'm doing. I usually post something there.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll shuttle everybody there. Tony, it's been wonderful, man. Thank you for taking a minute out today for the show. Best of luck with the album and everything as we move forward.
Thanks. It's a pleasure, and thank you guys for what you're doing. And it's just been I had a great fun. Thanks.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Madrid, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Tony for his time, energy, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, visit Neon Jazz Interviews at either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.